You know, this drone incident has escalated an already volatile situation between the U.S. and Iran. Here's where Iran says the drone was shot down in their airspace. And this is where the U.S. says the drone was flying when it was shot down by Iran. That's 17 nautical miles from Iran's shoreline. And then this is where two oil tankers were attacked last week in the Gulf of Oman, which the U.S. blames on Iran. So what's going to happen next? Let's discuss now with former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Nicholas Burns, along with former Supreme Allied Commander for NATO forces, and that is General Wes Clark. General, thank you so much. So good evening, everyone, both of you. So how should the United States respond to the downing of this drone?
I think you got to go first to your allies. You got to try to bring your allies back on board, because a simple tit-for-tat process is going to lead to an escalation. That escalation doesn't have a logical ending point. We don't want to end up in a war. We don't want to end up wrecking commerce in the Gulf. And Iran knows this, and they know they've got President Trump and the United States of America over a barrel by this creeping escalation process.
But, General, do you understand why it took so long for the United States to release the coordinates of where the U.S. says the drone was shot down hours after Iran released their version?
Sure, because all this stuff is highly sensitive, it's classified, it's compartmented on the process. This is a stealth vehicle, or apparently it has some stealth characteristics, and so, yeah, there's a process that has to go through.
Yeah. Ambassador Burns, I want to bring you in now because a senior White House official laid it out this way. He said there is a Bolton versus Trump debate, with Trump not wanting conflict. Pompeo, Pence, and incoming acting Defense Secretary Mark Esper are, quote, swing votes. If the president is so wary about another foreign conflict, why is he surrounding himself with people like Bolton or Pompeo?
Well, first of all, Don, I'd say this. This is a real threat by Iran in the Gulf. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards have been a problem for the United States for 3 decades. This is dangerous and provocative behavior to fire at an American drone and take it down, to attack these 2 commercial vessels. Last week, the global economy depends still on the flow of oil and gas from the Persian Gulf. So there's a national security imperative here. Keep the Gulf open, and that's to warn the Iranians not to do this again. But I agree with General Clark. There's no reason to go to war. We've been containing Iranian power for 30 years. President Reagan faced a crisis somewhat similar to this 30 years ago. We can handle this if we're steady, and I hope that the so-called moderates in the Trump administration will be able to win the day.
Mm-hmm. General Clark, I want you to take a look at this map. We'll put it up. It's a map of the number of active duty U.S. troops in the Middle East, about 14,000 in Afghanistan, 10,000 in Qatar, 5,200 in Iraq, and the levels go down from there. There are also numerous U.S. military bases in the region. Here's my question. What would war with Iran, what would it look like?
Well, it wouldn't just be these people that are in the region right now. You see a buildup. We'd bring assets in from the United States. You'd see a massive series of airstrikes that would take out Iran's air defense, its naval power in the Gulf, so it can't block shipping. This might go on for 4 days. It might go on for 4 weeks. Depends on exactly how good Iran's technology is. And then we'd go after other key assets in the process. Probably have to land some troops, have to go in and really dig out the nuclear installations, because I think if you're going to go in there, you're going to go after the nuclear stuff. But here's the point. You can do this, just like we got to Baghdad in 3 weeks. People said, oh, gee, it's going to be too tough. No, we've got a really great army and Navy and Air Force and Marines. But the question is, what's the end state of the war? If you don't have something that follows it, some new government that can actually take control of the country, what you've done is created a very dangerous failed state. And this is what we did in Iraq. It's what's actually happened in Libya. And I don't hear any discussion of the end state. What I see is a discussion of tit-for-tat escalation. And because Iran can't match us in that escalation in the Gulf, they would probably do what's called horizontal escalation, right, which is do strikes elsewhere.
Got it.
And this is not a prescription for a good policy.
Yeah.
there is no clear articulation of what the United States really wants out of its pressure campaign against Iran.
Before we run out of time, I have to get Ambassador Burns back in. Listen, Ambassador, the president says that he has a feeling shooting down the drone may have been a mistake, but that's not what Iran is saying. Is President Trump trying to give Iran or himself an out?
He may be, because the Iranians, this was purposeful on the part of the Iranians. They knew what they were doing. And frankly, I think President Trump would be right to back off a little bit, warn the Iranians privately, a stiff warning, get the allies behind us, keep the Gulf open, contain Iranian power. There is no reason to go to war with them, and the law of unintended consequences can come back to bite you pretty quickly, as we found out in Iraq in 2003.
Are those the diplomatic options you're saying for de-escalation that you just mentioned there?
They are. I mean, we have a way to talk to the Iranians, and frankly, we should be. President Obama opened up a continuous channel with the Iranians, which was smart. President Trump has closed it down. We ought to be talking frankly to the Iranians right now and warning them. That's the best way to keep the peace. And again, Don, we've been containing Iran for 30 years. There's no reason for us to change that policy now. We've got a lot going on in Iraq and in Afghanistan. The Syria situation is blown up. And so the United States has to be careful here, but it's the Iranians who provoke this, and therefore the rest of the world, the Europeans, the Gulf Arabs, and others ought to be in lockstep behind us. That's not the case right now because there's not very much trust in President Donald Trump.
Ambassador Burns, General Clark, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. We'll be right back.
Thank you.